I'm Ruth Storme, and I'm a pharmacist, and I started working at the ethics committee of UZ Leuven in Belgium for 4 years ago as a staff member, and now I'm for 3 years I'm a coordinator at the ethics committee. An ethics committee is an independent body, and we are responsible for supervising the rights of the patients, the well-being and safety of patients who participate in clinical trials, and patients and also subjects, so not only patients but subjects who participate in a clinical trial. We have a focus on vulnerable people like children or persons who are incapacitated to informed consent. And our main focus is that we evaluate research projects or experiments that fall under the Belgian law of 7 May 2004. And that's the law on experiments related to medical science and healthcare. So these projects must be evaluated by an ethics committee. So that's our main focus at our ethics committee. But we also evaluate projects or the use of human body materials. When that's used for clinical research, we also see these projects. We also do now with the GDPR. It's a big focus. Also, we do an privacy check with the experiments. We also evaluate master theses from the group of biomedical science. So yeah, that's our main focus. So the members are also defined in the law, and it's defined that it must have the composition must be broad and ensure experience in different areas of the clinical research. So it's defined that you need to have professionals in the healthcare, in the biomedical science, but also outside the medical community. So it's defined that you must have healthcare professionals like a general practitioner, but also 2 nurses and hospital pharmacists. So that's more the medical world. And then outside the medical world, you also need to have a psychologist, a statistician, and legal expert. So it's very broad. So also members outside the medical community, but it's also defined in the law that the majority, so more than 50%, needs to be a physician. So that's defined in the law, and our particular composition you can find on our website with all the names. It's also defined if you want, as an EC, to evaluate studies with an investigational medicinal product. So these are the UDRECT studies. So when you want, as an EC, to evaluate studies with medicines, it's also defined in the law that a patient representative must be involved in or must be a member of your ethics committee. So we also have now 2 effective patient representatives in our EC and 3 alternates. And it's defined in the law that they need to be seen as a lay person. So they may not have a healthcare profession. And so yeah, when we evaluate those studies, they must also look at the study, the informed consent and everything. And then there's an additional requirement in the law. If you want, as an EC, to evaluate phase 1 studies, and these are studies that for the first time a medicinal product is tested in humans, in subjects. when you want, as an EC, to evaluate those studies, you must have a member that's have experience in clinical pharmacology, and also a member who has experience in conducting and evaluate those phase 1 clinical trials, and then also a representative of healthy volunteer. So that's those phase 1 trials are mostly executed on healthy volunteers for the first time that you test a medicinal product. And so it's defined in the law, if you want to evaluate as an EC those kind of studies, then a healthy volunteer or a representative of those healthy volunteers must also be involved. And he or she may also not have a healthcare profession, and he must have participated in those one of two phase 1 clinical trials. So we have different kinds of guidelines that we need to follow. So there is the GCP rules, the good clinical practice principles. These are very important. And as an ethics committee, we do a check of the risk balance of a study. So the risk-benefit balance, so the benefits must be higher than the risk, or at least that must be that must be clear out of the protocol. That must be our evaluation, that the risks are lower than the benefits. And so we do a check of the protocol, so the description of the study, and also when it's a study with a medicinal product, we check the investigator's brochure, so all the information about the medicinal product and the design of the study, we do a check of that. But also we check our investigator if he is suitable to lead the study. Then we also check if the facilities in the hospital of the site, if these are okay to execute the study. And then also a very important aspect is the informed consent. So that's the written information that the patient or a subject sees, and that on base of that information he can decide if he wants to participate in the study or not. So that's also a very important document to check for the patient representatives. And that's our main focus, so the protocol and the ICF. The ICF must be clear and complete, so that the patients can really decide if they want to participate or not. We also do a check of the recruitment, so how the subjects will be recruited for a study. If, for example, for a study with healthy volunteers, if they want to use flyers or posters, these kinds of recruitment material we also check. Then if there is an insurance that's also defined in the law, we do also those checks. And at our ethics committee, it's organized that two members of our ethics committee are the main, check all the documents, and then the other members can also give their evaluation, but we always appoint two members who read it very good. And the patient representative must also be a member who reads a study, who evaluates a study when it's a study with medical products. So when we evaluate a study, we discuss it with all the members. We most of the time have questions, and then we send them to the investigator or the sponsor of the trial. And when the answers come back, we do a check if it's okay or not, and then we can give an approval or not. So the patient representative, I think it's now for a year that we have patient representatives in our EC, and it's important because it's also defined in the law that they must be seen as a lay person. So I think that's very important because they have experience. They have experience and they can really set a clear view on the documents, on the especially the informed consent, so they can have a clear view from their view to see if the ICF, the written information is clear, is complete, if a patient understands or could understand those documents. And it's difficult for us sometimes to put them or to see those documents as, or to read them as a patient, as a lay person. So I think that's that's an added value of patient representatives in an EC. They have a different view on the documents and they can give comments where we don't always think about. Their view or their evaluation of the ICF, of the written information, the informed consent forms, that's really an added value. They focus on the section of the costs. So when you, as a subject, participate in a clinical study, then everything that's specific for the study must be free for the subjects. It must be on a study budget. And we see that those sections are sometimes misinterpreted by the subjects, by the participants. So we also, as an EC, participated in a work group where a new ICF template was set up, was written, and when there was a draft of that ICF template, it was also sent to patients, to patient representatives, to see what they think, if it's clear for them, if they have questions, and it was seen that the section about the costs was very difficult for them to understand. So that was very, very good, and now we have more attention to that section, the reimbursement, the costs for the patient when they participate in a clinical trial. That's a very added value for them. And then I also think the ICFs are very long, and I think that's also very good that they can evaluate the ICF and see if it's clear. It's maybe long, but it's clear, so that's also good. So I think, yeah, the ICFs are evaluated very good by the patient representatives. We asked physicians here in the hospital who treated patients with chronic diseases, because yeah, you want patients who are not too sick to evaluate the documents. They need to have time because it's a lot of documents. It's a lot of work actually for them also to evaluate those documents. So we asked physicians here if they know patients, and then we also did a call on our website of the ethics committee and in our newsletter. And yeah, we had a lot of reactions. There were a lot of response. So yeah, we didn't have to search that much. Yeah, that's a difficult one because you can't have an expert in every disease in every trial that you evaluate. So we have 5 patient representatives in our EC, and so if we work with alternates, we also have different areas, different diseases that are represented. And we choose representatives that have a bigger view, so they can place themselves into other areas. So yeah, but that's a difficult one. But yeah, with the alternate members, so the different patient representatives, we have now 5. We think that's okay.